Another prospect signs with the Calgary Flames and will make their debut, likely against the Seattle Kraken. Abram Wiebe is the newest member of the Sea of Red.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome. I am Ryan G. Welcome to Locked On Flames. Coming up, we're going to take a look at what we learned this week. A look at what we learned this week in Calgary Flames hockey, plus the lottery odds for the Calgary Flames to get the best draft pick they possibly can, maybe teetering against a team that is reeling in the Seattle Kraken. And that might be where the debut of Abram Wiebe takes place. That sounds to be the case as he signs his entry-level contract with the Calgary Flames. I imagine that this is both fun news for Wiebe, who came over in the Rasmus Andersson trade, but also a little bittersweet considering that his team, the North Dakota Fighting Hawks, were one of the favorites to win the NCAA Frozen Four and instead were ousted against the Wisconsin Badgers in the semifinals. So, you're getting a pretty good product in this Flames defender. Abram Wiebe saying you work your whole life towards that, and to finally get it done is a pretty surreal experience. This only happens one time in your life, being able to sign your first contract and play your first game. So just trying to take all of those emotions in and make the best of it. Yeah, work your whole life toward this goal, and it's something that's pretty exciting. 22 years old and was playing in the NCAA Frozen Four, came over in the Rasmus Andersson deal, and gives Calgary another young defender to put back into the blue line with the likes of Jan Kuznetsov, Zayne Parekh. This is a very young defense in some components when you compare what Calgary has on the blue line, Hunter Brustevich, but then you also do have some veterans, Kevin Ball, Zach Whitecloud, Olli Määttä, who is also a trade piece that was added by the Calgary Flames. I think this is where the Flames are pretty excited to actually get one of their NCAA signees on the ice, because Jonathan Castagna, who came over in another deal that Calgary did in the trade deadline with the Utah Mammoth, that was part of the deal that brought Määttä in. You have somebody who's not going to be playing in a Flames uniform in 2025-26. And so finally you get a chance to look at one of these players that are on the younger side for the Calgary Flames and bring him in to actually play on the ice. I was reading through social media. It sounds like if he does play against the Kraken, which I keep saying it hypothetically because nothing's done until it's done, but the consensus seems like that is going to be the case to play against the Seattle Kraken. Then you're going to have a whole bunch of folks who come in to support him. He talked about having an unbelievable year to the official Calgary Flames website, saying a coaching change over the summer. He had Dane Jackson come and bring 50 new guys and be able to make it to the Frozen Four. Shows just how deep that this team was. Not the way we wanted to see it end, but ultimately had a good year. 29 points, 5 goals, 24 assists for Wiebe in 40 games. He led all defensemen on the squad in scoring and earned an all NCHC second team honor selection. So pretty excited to see what he can do against the Seattle team that's just reeling. I mean, Calgary is going to have its work cut out for it against Seattle, because there's nothing that really has stood out for the Calgary Flames this year. There are no easy games for this iteration, but after Seattle had lost 5 in a row, they finally get off the schneid, beating the Golden Knights on Thursday. Calgary loses at Colorado, and the Kraken ended up getting a 4-3 win over Vegas. They're now 2-6-2 in their last 10 games. So Calgary's had a lot of good luck. I was talking about being a Kraken season ticket holder. I'm still hoping to get up for the game. That is my goal. Just found out that there's some things that might make it hard for me to get on the road and get up there, which is kind of disappointing because I've only seen the Flames lose once in Seattle. And so the track record of success for Calgary in this not rivalry, but certainly Pacific Division matchup ever since the Kraken joined as a 32nd team in the NHL, it's been a lot of fun to see Calgary have all the success that they've had up there. So hopefully Abram Wiebe will find the ice. You had Tyson Gross play well in his debut, not his debut, beg your pardon, his scoring debut, first chance to score an NHL goal against the Colorado Avalanche on Thursday. So maybe he's out on the ice. You had Blake Coleman, looks like, was out of town, welcoming in another child, is what I think I saw through Reddit. Ryan Strome was ill, and so that provided the opportunity for Tyson Gross to hit the ice. And so, the Calgary has a lot of fun combinations ahead of them for this game, and just a lot of excitement. Big kudos to Gross for getting that that goal, which is super exciting. Have the opportunity to score a goal, and dropping a tough decision to the Colorado Avalanche is always kind of a bummer, considering the fact that this Calgary team has just not been as good as you'd like them to be this year. Eliminated from the playoffs a couple nights ago. They went with Sharkey up on the Backlund and Coronato line. And I think Matt Vigridden continues to be another positive sign that Calgary has, that things are going to ultimately work out in the end for the Flames, but it's still a little bit few and far between, considering the fact that they just don't have a lot of offense to show from the rest of the production, except for maybe the exception of Morgan Frost, who's come on as of late. So maybe Abram Wiebe will be more of that true defenseman for Calgary. Again, just a 4-goal season with North Dakota this year. And instead, maybe you have someone like Zayne Parekh, who has a little bit of a breakout. He's been playing better as of late, and could be a huge difference for this Calgary team going forward. Seattle, like I said, it's been a struggle for the Kraken. They are just not getting as much done as they need to get done this season. They have not been officially eliminated from postseason contention. In fact, Calgary right now is still in the bottom 3 of the Western Conference. You have 4 teams eliminated in the Eastern Conference going into play on Friday, and Utah has locked up that first wild card spot. So the Pacific Division order is not set. The Kings could still technically catch some of the teams in the Pacific Division top 3. You have Nashville knocking on the door, going 1 point behind LA into play on Friday, with Nashville 1 game more played. They have 3 left, and the Kings have 4. Winnipeg still a chance. San Jose, St. Louis, and the Kraken still have an opportunity to make the postseason, but certainly for St. Louis and Seattle, both being sub 80 points, that chance seems to be a little bit less of a reality for sure. So exciting times for Calgary by getting the signing of Abram Wiebe as he makes it to the NHL. Jonathan Castagna, Axel Hertig are also there already. Let me know what you think of the signing of the North Dakota defenseman, as his season in the collegiate ranks over, and a chance to possibly skate on the ice at Climate Pledge Arena. How excited are you to see part of that piece from the Rasmus Andersson trade? I mean, Rasmus goes to Vegas, and the stuff that came back, actually, you look at the Weegs trade first: MacKenzie, Weegar for Olli, Määttä, Jonathan Castagna, and then the 3 second-round picks, which are going to likely prove very critical in the upcoming draft. And then the Rash trade had, Wieb with Whitecloud. There's a chance that we talked about that earlier this week, that Calgary might have got the better of the veterans in that trade. Rasmus Andersson's well-beloved, of course, in Calgary. You didn't want to see him go anywhere if the Flames had been winning, but Whitecloud seems to be missing from that Vegas lineup in so many ways. And then the first-round pick in 27, the second-round pick that came over along with Wiebe, second-round pick in 2028 when Rasmus was traded in January. Playoffs out of the question, but lottery position still very much in play. Lottery odds kind of teetering as Calgary gets set to take on the Seattle Kraken on Saturday. We'll take a look and see kind of where the Flames stand and what could go wrong if they were to win against the Seattle Kraken, if you're looking for the best results in the draft lottery. We'll do that next as this episode of Locked On Flames continues. Spring is a natural reset point, and if there's one thing that can quietly cost businesses money, it is messy communications. Missed calls, scattered texts, no clear thread on who said what. And that's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2 with over 3,000 reviews, and it is trusted by more than 90,000 businesses. It lets your entire team share one business number so you never miss a call, text, or an opportunity. And the part that's the best, you have clear communication, a clear idea. It's a full thread where everything lives for your entire team on who said what calls came in, what texts have been written, and voicemails as well. The whole team sees that conversation, so there's nothing that falls through the cracks. And you get AI summaries as well that save serious time logging calls and figuring out next steps. Make this the season no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedonnhl. That's quo.com/lockedonnhl. Quo, no missed calls and no missed customers. Thank you for making Locked On Flames your first listen every single day. We invite you to check out our Everydayer Club. You can go to lockedonflames.supercast.com. You can get access to our members-only Discord server. Go in there. We're getting to the Stanley Cup Finals. At this point, with the Flames eliminated, it's time to start rooting for the teams that you don't want to see make it to the Stanley Cup. Not another Western Conference championship, please, for the Edmonton Oilers. So all of my hopes and dreams are riding on the fact that the Oilers will be ousted at some point in the Stanley Cup playoffs. You can go into that members-only Discord server, and you can start rooting for the teams that you want to see beat the teams you don't want to win. You can talk to other Locked On podcast hosts of those teams, and of course, hash it out with other fans as well. Plus, you get our show ad-free on your own customized audio feed. It's kind of a win-win, and it starts at $5 a month. Find out more at lockedonflames.supercast.com or click on the show notes to learn more. Kraken, Flames. It's going to be the Saturday matchup, and right now, the Flames go into play on Friday with the 11.5% chance of getting the first overall pick. That's the third best chance that is out there. Calgary, third worst team right now in the league. But imagine if they find a way to beat the Seattle Kraken. Seattle this season against the Flames, they've already played, as you would expect with a Pacific Division team. And you look at the matchup so far this year, a 4-2 win by Calgary back in mid-December. That was one of those stretches where the Flames were light hot. And then you also have Calgary falling 5-1 in that really awful stretch to open up play in early January. The third meeting happening coming up on Saturday at Climate Pledge Arena. And like I said, Calgary's been really stellar against the Kraken in Seattle. That's kind of been historically the case. But the Flames win. They'll find a way to go to 75 points on the year. Seattle would drop to 77, and the Flames and Kraken have played the same amount of games. So you start to look at where positioning for the postseason goes. I mean, Calgary would be right there if they find a way to win that game. There's not a lot of teams in the Eastern Conference that can start to surpass Calgary. I mean, it's certainly possible with Florida and Toronto sitting there at 78 points, but by and large, you'd like to see Calgary continue to have those odds to win their best spot in the NHL draft lottery. Vancouver still the best odds, in fact, has officially been locked into the best odds in the NHL draft lottery. And then Chicago follows Rangers, then Seattle, Toronto, and Florida following the Calgary Flames. Flames have never picked in their Calgary franchise history better than fourth all time. And so this is unprecedented territory. And I think for Calgary fans, certainly for myself, what I would like more than anything is for the Flames to only be in this situation once during this rebuild. They're going to be awful now, win the draft lottery. That would be the best case scenario. You can get the player that you want. You assume that's Gavin McKenna. And then you have an offensive powerhouse, a weapon. If you missed it on Thursday, we talked about a reaction to losing to the Colorado Avalanche. And I still think that the best friend for Calgary is ultimately going to be time, because that Avalanche lineup, the one that may take Colorado to the Stanley Cup championship, it's so old. I mean, it's relatively old. You get a whole bunch of players who are over 30 years old. Those are still players like Matt Coronato, Connor Zary. If they are, in fact, the players that the Flames hoped they would be when they drafted them, you're still, a half decade away from having those guys be the age of some of the players that are playing for the Avs right now. So time, I think, is more going to be a factor than trying to get your own version of Nathan MacKinnon. But having that version on the roster, if it is Gavin McKenna, would make a huge difference, of course. Now, Seattle's gone over a little bit of a overhaul. They changed their head coach going into this season, and then they had announcement earlier this week that they were making a change in the front office. Locked On Kraken talked about just that on their show earlier this week.
A full independent audit led by the GM. Doesn't really sound all that independent. So that is the main news so far, is that Jason Botterill will stay. I ran into him in the hall on the way to this thing, and I saw him. He said hello, and I was walking next to Curtis Crabtree of Q13, and I was like, this guy's way too chipper for somebody who is worried about his job. And I was like, I think Jason's staying. And sure enough, then 20 minutes later, we got that confirmation.
CEO of the Kraken was the one who's taking the press conference. They oust their vice president, I believe, of hockey operations, president of operations. And so you have the GM kind of taking control of that franchise, and Lane Lambert, and the 32nd team in the entire National Hockey League will have some work to do coming up in 2026-27. It's a 5:00 Mountain puck drop on Saturday between the Kraken and the Flames. We'll see if Calgary can find a way to win another game, or if you're on Team Tank, maybe not find any points on the road ice in the final game of this road trip that will see Calgary return back to the Saddle Dome coming up on Sunday when they take on the Utah Mammoth, followed by a game against the Avs and then the Kings to wrap up the 2025-26 schedule. For what it's worth, by the way, did a Tankathon sim lottery today. Toronto bounced up to the top pick. Calgary fell all the way to number 4. So something to keep an eye on. Ended up being a Chase Reed pick, I believe, in that mock draft that I did today on tankathon.com. What did we learn this week in Calgary Flames hockey? We'll talk about that next when this episode of Locked On Flames continues. Coming up on Monday's show, we are going to take a look at the opponents that Calgary played and do our official opponent jersey power rankings. Thank you so much for enjoying the aesthetic evaluation that we do of the Calgary Flames opponents every single week on Mondays. And of course, we'll try to take a look at what happened over the weekend with 2 games set for Calgary. Any other signings potentially for Craig Conroy and company? That might be interesting as well. What we learned this week in Calgary Flames hockey, of course, acceleration of the rebuild. You always hope that it goes faster than it is supposed to. I personally hope that Calgary finds a way to have postseason hockey in the Saddle Dome, going 4 straight years without a playoff appearance. It would be nice to see the Dome leave with that kind of moment. If nothing else, you start to look at what are the big moments that are going to happen with the 41 regular season games a year from now. And then you have the 3 regular season games remaining this year. All those bold trade deadline moves that Craig Conroy has made, how will they pay off? Well, you start to get a clearer picture because of the signing of Jonathan Castagna, although he won't be in a Flames uniform. But you will see Abram Wiebe most likely in the final few games with the Calgary Flames. You also have Tyson Gross, who ended up scoring 2 goals. One got called back because he was narrowly offside. But that's impressive, given the fact that he was a coveted college free agent, and you want to start seeing some of these prospects actually find time on NHL ice. Of course, Dustin Wolf continues to be impressive as a member of this team. He is the cornerstone. He is the reason for the rebuild because you have your goalie locked up. Dustin Wolf right now, 55 games this season. 22 of Calgary's 32 wins have been with Wolfie in net, just a shade under a 900 save percentage. You look at how he's been in games that Calgary has won, only 1.76 goals allowed. That's pretty impressive stuff for Wolfie. And other than the sub 10-minute performance against Colorado when it felt like maybe either just wasn't the Flames' night or Colorado was that good, he bounced back and put up 38 saves against the Avalanche in their last game on Thursday. So pretty impressive stuff from Wolf, who's been not as good as he's been in years past, but still the goalie that we thought he was. Imagine if he gets somewhere closer to 2.7, 2.8 goals against in 2026-27, somewhere between where he is now at 3.07 and where he was last year at 2.64. I mean, that was some unreal numbers that he put up that year. But yeah, you have all the NCAA signings that are coming in. Abram Wiebe and then maybe a chance at some of these higher draft picks that Calgary has in the both 2026 NHL entry draft, but over the course of the next 3 years, a total of 18 picks in the first 3 rounds of the next 3 drafts, including 6 in the first 2 rounds of this upcoming draft in June. You hope it goes faster, but only time is going to tell where this Calgary Flames team goes. What about that line of Matt Coronato, Morgan Frost, and Matt Coronato? I mean, that group is building some semblance of chemistry, and we go into the weekends with your leading goal scorer for the Calgary Flames still being Morgan Frost. But one thing that's been interesting is since his last call-up from the AHL, Matt Coronato is the number 1 scorer from a point standpoint for the Calgary Flames. And that's really positive news, because my premise will continue to be maybe it's chemistry with Frost. It certainly just might be Matt Corona's ability to go out there and play, unlike many of the other players on this roster for Calgary. Anticipatory, seems to have no hesitation to be able to get the puck away from his stick quickly, find teammates, and he was on the connecting side of that Tyson Gross goal. So that's exciting stuff for Calgary. Frost with 21 goals. He gets his first career 20-goal season, and that's also really exciting too. I mean, you have somebody who just was able to get over a hump that had eluded him in his Philadelphia Flyers days, and he just seems to be somebody that is trying to make a run to re-sign with his Calgary team as he's an unrestricted free agent season after next. Connor Zary, Jonathan Castagna are these versions of older young players, and of course a brand new player with Castagna coming up from Cornell. Are these guys that are going to potentially be difference makers for Calgary? One of the things that the scouts loved about Castagna, what he showed at Cornell, is his ability to win faceoffs. And Calgary has a guy like Michael Backlund who's pretty good in that department, but is he as good as what Castagna could potentially be? I mean, we'll see, because at some point Michael's gonna hang it up, and so it'd be interesting to see if Calgary can have kind of his replacement in the wings, and just who's going to emerge as the key next center for Calgary as well. And what about Ryan Strome and Olli Määttä? This is what we learned this week in Calgary Flames hockey. Strome and Määttä are tearing it up ever since they were traded from their respective teams. Strome not part of a package deal. He just came over from the Ducks, and then you had Määttä, who was part of the MacKenzie Weegar deal, and finally getting a significant amount of ice time, and is kind of paying dividends for his team. I mean, there's been a lot of excitement that Määttä has brought to this crew for Calgary so far this season, ultimately playing 17 games and is spending 22 minutes on the ice. You love to see it when you get a guy on the defensive side who can burn up time, just kind of the way that MacKenzie Weegar did. Should mention too, I didn't realize I didn't bring this up in the opening segment, but Abram Wiebe is going to wear number 52 according to the Calgary Flames Twitter feed. If that's the case, he's picking up MacKenzie Weegar's number. He wore 25 in college, and I saw some talk about the idea that maybe 25 will ultimately be a retired number before the Saddle Dome closes out, hence why they may not want him to wear it. That's speculation that I saw in the social media world. Also, lineup flexibility. How flexible will Ryan Huska be, both finishing out the season, trying to play young players, no Blake Coleman in the lineup, no Ryan Strome in the lineup, but also see how Calgary opens up the preseason next year as well with some of the things that they learn from the final stretch at this point. And then, of course, how much of this relies, as we look at what we learned this week in Calgary Flames hockey, on the way the ping pong balls go, right? Are you going to have a Utah type situation where somebody moves up from number 14 and ultimately gets into the top 4? You have someone who goes from 12 or 11 because you can move just that maximum of 10 spots. But we saw how many times that happened last year with the Islanders going up all the way to number 1 and then Utah ultimately getting to number 4. Maybe it's a good sign for Calgary that they maybe had some of those long odds go against the teams that were supposed to have the top pick, top 3, top 4 picks last year. And maybe since that's kind of out of the lottery ball system, everything's better. Of course, it was the first time I believe that they televised the lottery. And so May 4th, maybe they got that out of their system and it doesn't need to be such a must-see TV kind of moment. Calgary prospect pool rankings, they jumped from 13 to number 3, according to Scott Wheeler from The Athletic. That's really promising as well. And then you have that final stretch of some potential reality checks, and it kind of worked out the way that Calgary might have expected. They've lost 5 of their last 7 games, and they've lost both of the games to Colorado. Granted, they gave the Avs a little bit more of a run for their money in the final game of the 2 in Denver over the course of the last week plus. Now you have Seattle, Utah, Colorado, Los Angeles. 3 out of those 4 potentially are playoff teams. It's not an easy road by any means for the Calgary Flames. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Locked On Flames. I invite you to join us on Monday. We're going to look at those official opponent jersey power rankings and see how things wind up with a road finale against Seattle and the first of 3 to close out the season at the Saddle Dome, with Utah coming to town. Continue to please hit the subscribe button and share it with a friend. That always makes a huge difference with any form of media, certainly on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. We just can't stress enough the difference between listening to the show and hitting the subscribe button. Thank you so much for everybody who makes Locked On Flames your first listen every single day. If you never miss an episode, check out our Everydayer Club. We built it for you in mind. Members only Discord access, ad-free access to Locked On Flames. Go to lockedonflames.supercast.com or click the link in the show notes to learn more. For those on video, stick around. We're going to send you over to the first ever 24/7 national Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. For those on audio, please make your second listen NHL Game Night with Locked On NHL. My name is Ryan G. Thanks for having fun with us. We'll talk to you again soon for more Locked On Flames.